everyone, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and together we are ThinkerThemer, and this is the most exciting video of the year because it's our top 10 games of 2022.
Yeah, that is games published in 2022 or as listed in 2022 as per BGG.
And we've played a lot of them. A lot of work has gone into play has gone into the lead up of this video. We've played so many of them, but we might play more after this because, you know, the 2022 games are still making their way from all of the big cons across the year. So we haven't played all of them, of course, but we've played a significant amount of them that we feel very comfortable that we have two great lists of 10 fabulous games. Yeah. And not a lot of overlap this year.
Yeah, so there'll be a lot of different games to talk through.
We're growing apart.
Yeah.
We're
well,
growing
it'll be interesting
apart
to see what the if there's any similarities, at least within our own list. If there's any common denominators.
Anyway, let's get into our top 10, starting with mine. Now, my number 10 game, I might just need a crane to bring it in. One moment, please. Beep, 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 beep. Just kidding, it's just the lid. It is probably the biggest surprise that you're going to find on my list this year. It is Frosthaven. And to all of you people out there that have told me how much you love Gloomhaven and that we must try it, to that I say, you're right. You were right. Frosthaven is, of course, the sequel, the much anticipated follow-up to Gloomhaven, and it's fairly similar in its design in that a lot of the mechanics are the same. I'm still under embargo, so I can't talk about my feelings about this one too much, but I did get permission to put it on this list. And I really wanted to just cover off the fact that this game uses all of that same dungeon crawling element as Gloomhaven. You are using the same hand management system, which is what I really fell in love with when I played this game. I was so surprised how invested I became in my character, and the way that your deck starts to build out with more and more powerful actions, and then that beautiful way that you simultaneously play two cards. You have to decide on a top and bottom action on each of those cards, and then you get to decide on the initiative or the order, the turn order every turn. And it's a cooperative game. Not my thing. It's a fantasy game.
What has happened?
Not my thing. This is so far out of my comfort zone. And
we're going through a gamer's identity crisis.
I am going through a gamer's identity, but I have to say, I was so surprised at just how mechanically great this is. And even the way the battle works, you know, there's not too much luck involved, a little bit of those modifier decks. I don't know, the way it all came together, and I was just having such a great time. It was just Maggie and I playing together, and I could totally see that Amy in a different life where we didn't have to move through hundreds and hundreds of games each year. This would be something that I would sink my teeth into and really enjoy. And I won't talk again too much about other elements that I liked or disliked about this game. You can see that on our channel later this week when the embargo lifts. But suffice to say that Frosthaven introduces some Euro elements that I don't think I would like Gloomhaven as much because it doesn't have those elements. So more to come on Frosthaven.
More to come.
Definitely the biggest surprise of the year, and my number 10, Frosthaven.
And now we're going to go to the complete opposite end from Frosthaven to something incredibly cute and welcoming and adorable, and that is Creature Comforts. Now, this game, many may be surprised to see it on my list because it's actually a fairly light game. It's a really lovely intro or gateway type game. You can play it with with kids. But the reason it's on my list is because this is probably by far the absolute perfect theme for me. This is probably my favorite theme of all time. If I could design a game, it would be this theme. You are having to deck out your beautiful little house for the winter. So in preparation for the winter months where you're going to have to be all cozy indoors. And so this game has this really fairly straightforward dice worker placement mechanic. The main kind of key thing about it is you have your own 2 dice. that when you roll them, you kind of know what the number is going to be. And so as you're going into the worker placement spots, or you allocate them into the worker placement spots, you know, essentially those are locked in and they're guaranteed dice to be that number. But there's also 4 communal dice that get rolled, and you don't necessarily know when you're kind of hedging your bets as to where you're going to be, what actions you're going to be taking, what those numbers are going to be. So you may end up with numbers you're like, oh, how do I make this work? I may not be able to make it work. So very, very simple concept, but all you're going to be doing is things like you're collecting, harvesting ingredients. I was like harvesting ingredients. Yeah, like some of them are actually like food.
Yeah.
The other thing you're going to be doing is creating these beautiful little, the actual creature comforts. So and they are beautifully thematically linked. So you might have, if you get like your board games, and you get like other different toys, or you get your rocking chair and a cup of tea. So
basically Maggie's life.
My life. This is my life in the theme of a board game.
And some thick socks. All the things you love.
All the things that I love. So this is, again, this is a beautiful production. I absolutely love the artwork and the aesthetic of it. Very, very easy, very relaxed as well. And it's a really, really pleasant, relaxed sort of solo mode as well. So for those reasons, that is my number 10, Creature Comforts.
And for my number 9, we are away from dungeon crawling territory and much back in my happy place of the Euro world with Great Western Trail, Argentina. Now, I had to put this on my list because if you know anything about, probably our likely top 10, I absolutely love the game Great Western Trail. And Great Western Trail, Argentina keeps a significant proportion of the game the same. So I had to include it on this list because my love for Great Western Trail certainly gets projected onto this new version of it. And Great Western Trail Argentina is like a level up of Great Western Trail. In fact, it feels a bit like having Great Western Trail and then having a couple of significant expansions integrated into it. One of the new things it introduces is a new type of worker called a farmer, but it doesn't act in the same way as the other workers in the original Great Western Trail. In fact, you're going to have to help these farmers out with the strength that you are collecting either on your cattle cards or unlocking on your board. And that's going to allow you to bring them over and maybe use them as a worker the same way you use regular workers, or collect them off to the side, which is going to give you victory points at the end of the game. And it also introduces a new economy around a resource called grain. And this grain is going to help your cattle be fed when you are shipping your cattle off, yes, I said shipping, on boats to different ports around the world. But never fear, there's still a train, so you can still deliver your cattle on train, but this time there are shortcuts on the path. So you don't have to go all the way to Kansas City like last time. You're going to Buenos Aires, but you can shortcut along the path if you unlock that ability for yourself. And so this game just gives you so many more ways to try and win the game. It is complex, and for that reason, I wouldn't always turn to it above Great Western Trail, but it did add an interesting twist, and because I love the base game so much, it had to make my number 9, Great Western Trail, Argentina.
And now we go on to my number 9, and my number 9 is a game that only recently came into my radar, and that is Tenpenny Parks. Now, Tenpenny Parks is all about building your own theme park with different attractions. And again, it's another really excellent gateway game, fairly easy to teach, easy to get into. And you've got these, again, it's sort of worker placement. So you've got your little worker meeples that are going out onto the board to either help you clear off some space on your land so that you have space for those attractions to go into, or get concessions. So they're the little, almost like the stands where you're going to sell hot dogs, or you're going to sell all sorts of different things and essentially make some money from the people who are visiting your park, or even just give them more of the 3 key emotions. So that's the other thing. Like, you have these emotion trackers of awe, joy, and thrill. And so but the main thing obviously is going to be generating enough money so that you can actually build your polyomino attractions on your little board. Sometimes you're going to run out of space, so you're going to have to like expand your board. The key thing with this one is the adjacency rules in terms of how you're placing your attractions is they can't touch adjacent, so they can't actually orthogonally or side by side touch each other. You have to kind of arrange them so they're only touching at a corner.
Blocker style.
Blocker style, exactly. Even though I hate I don't hate blockers, but it's one of those highly contested or controversial games in our household. But yeah, so it's a fairly straightforward puzzle, but you've got obviously some like hidden, like some objectives that you're trying to complete, and it works so well. It's a fairly, very simple, really simple what you're doing, but I just find it super satisfying.
And it's very charming, isn't it?
It is. Mm-hmm. And it also has a solo mode. That's a fairly straightforward solo mode. This is actually something that you'll see throughout my list. I believe all of my games on my list have a solo mode except for one. Which one will it be? But
I'm very surprised at, so far, the lightness of the games
in
your list this year, but they are all very theme strong, so it does make sense.
Yeah, so that's the other thing with this one. A lot of different attractions, like they can be, like Western attractions, or they can be like Atlantis sort of water park like attractions, or they can be a jungle, or they can be, so it's just. And then you do marketing as well to like attract, because ultimately it's the number of visitors is going to be your points at the end. So this game really won me over with its simplicity, but just like nice, fun, loved it. So that's my number 9, 10 penny parks.
Now, on to my number 8. My number 8 is a game called Lacrimosa. And in Lacrimosa, you are trying to finish off Mozart's Requiem. And you are going to be getting the assistance of some composers to help do so. Thematically, that is not why it's on my list. Surprise, surprise.
Do you want a hand? Do you want a hand with a theme?
Yeah,
do you want me to talk about
it's
fine.
No, because really, it's not a hugely thematic game. It's easy to kind of ignore the theme, which I was surprised about because when you first look at the board, it looks, well, first of all, it's pretty beige, which is not a problem, but it's also very busy and it does look much more complex than it actually is. This is very much a medium weight game, and the way that it works mechanically is buttery smooth. I really enjoyed playing this game. Basically, you've got your player board, and on your player board there are a number of slots where cards can slide into. And so everybody starts with the same hand of cards. And on your turn, you're simply going to be choosing a card to use the top action. Oh my goodness, I just realized there's a theme.
There you go.
It sounds just like
we found the common denominator.
It's nothing like Frosthaven. But you are going to be choosing an action that you want to take using the top part of one of the cards in your hand, and you're going to be choosing a card to collect the resources that are going to set you up for the next round by sliding that card into the bottom of your board and just showing the resources at the bottom of your card. So every turn you're simply going to be doing that, choosing 2 cards. It's very snappy, and the reason why you're playing those different actions, firstly, you can basically upgrade the cards that are in your hand that are going to give you more powerful actions or more powerful resources. So one thing you're going to be doing is buying new cards to improve your deck of action cards. The other thing that you can do is you can buy cards that are going to contribute to a tableau. And interestingly, another action you can take is you can perform those cards, or whatever the thematic term is, but basically you can either tap them to get an ongoing action because those cards will untap for the next round, or you can sell them off and then you can get a bigger advantage, but that means they're gone and out of your tableau, and the symbols that are on them are going to be collected for certain goals and things. The middle part of the board is all about traveling around to get some bonuses, and it uses the red resource in this game.
It's like a wheel.
It's a wheel.
Kind of makes sense. Yeah, you're kind of moving around. Yeah.
There's the black resource, which is going to help you get the cards. There's the red resource, which is going to help you travel around. And then there's the white resource, which
is like an ink blot, which is, I think, like a composition sort of thing. Yeah.
The white resource is going to help you attract the different composers who are going to help you write this this final piece. And the way that works mechanically is that it's an area control game, and a really interesting area control game, because rather than simply being the player who has the area majority there, you're going to be aligning yourself with one of the different composers, and then the composer who has the majority is then going to attract more points. And so it's this really interesting puzzle that you're watching and keeping an eye on who's shifting around the points, and all of a sudden someone makes a move, and now all of the contributions you've made there are worth less.
Yeah.
And so it's a really interesting puzzle. As soon as I learnt this game, it just made sense to me. It's very straightforward in its teach, but then it's really interesting in the way you choose to play it out. I like that you can be upgrading your deck, but it means you have to get rid of other cards out of your hand, which means you can actually run into a bit of trouble if you're removing certain actions from your hand. So you've got to be careful about the way that you balance that out. And I just found that every time it was an interesting decision, and not one that I had to labor over. So the turns are nice and quick, unless you're playing with people who have severe AP. I felt like it's very easy to get into and get started on, and it makes sense. If you're a Eurogamer, all of these different pieces that come together make sense, and it's a beautiful point salad.
This was interesting because this one was on one of my lists of anticipated games, ended up making your list.
It did, yeah. It could be any theme. I will say that, it's probably not as thematic as I thought it would be. And mechanically, putting the cards, like a quad card, the sliding cards
to the main board. That's quite satisfying.
It is super satisfying. Anyway, that is my number 8, Lacrimosa.
And now let's go to my number 8, and I am bringing all of the lighter, gamer-friendly games to the yard this year.
You are. I'm very surprised. You are very oriented towards heavy games.
I think I've now got. Well, I won't delay any longer. This is Flamecraft. I'll introduce you to Flamecraft. This is another game where the theme just won me over. So in this theme, in this game, I should say, you are a flame master, so you actually can speak dragon speak, and you have all these wonderful little dragons who are not the the stereotypical destroying, fire breathing to destroy village type dragons. These are the cousins of those nastier versions of dragons, probably the ones that you'd find in Frosthaven sort of dragons. So these are the friendlier, much more artistic, much more sensible cousins. And so what they do is they're crafters, they're artisans, and what you're going to be doing is you're helping them match in this beautiful little town to all these different shops and establishments. And some of them are going to go into the silversmithing or ironsmithing. Some of them are going to help with making potions. Some of them are going to help with growing plants. And so I absolutely love this game. It's a fairly, again, worker placement where you are allocating different dragons to all the different, you're allocating your dragon to a different shop, and then in that shop you can allocate some of the little dragons that you have in your hand for different bonuses, collect resources, ultimately for recipe fulfillment, which are the enchantments. So you can fulfill one of these enchantments, which then allow you to almost like supercharge those stores or those locations, so that then you can get even more goodies when you go there. This is just such a beautiful production. I absolutely love the artwork, love the aesthetic, both regardless of whether they have the deluxe edition or the retail edition. It's just the components are just so beautiful that it's just such a pleasure and so friendly, and so it just makes me happy. Yeah,
the artwork is gorgeous. The theme, the hipster dragon theme is super cute.
Love it.
And it does teach, it's a great entry-level game for the whole family, because it's going to help teach some important concepts around worker placement, contract fulfillment, but it does that in a very easy breezy kind of way. It's not complex, and is another really charming game.
The other thing with this one is, again, the tension, which was the thing where we're like, we're probably not as much for us initially. The tension is fairly low because you're not really blocking people from going anywhere. It's just if you go somewhere where another player is there, you're going to have to give them a resource. So it's fairly low conflict conflict from that point. Someone might end up taking the sort of the enchantment that you wanted, but that's, you know, there's still going to be more enchantments to come. I actually found that this solo mode, at the time that we played this originally when it was a prototype, there wasn't a solo mode for it. The solo mode actually brings in more tension because you now actually have almost like a timer, in that the solo mode is kind of helping eat away at those decks, and so, which is what determines then the end of the game. And so it actually brings in a little bit more of like, oh, okay, so I better, you know, I better really figure out what I'm doing. And it also has this setup which I really like, the sense of progression, where, you know, from the first game you have very limited shops that you have available, and so then as you're completing games, you're unlocking achievements that then bring in and eventually game by game over your kind of campaign and all those achievements, you're going to be fleshing out the game to its full potential. So that again gives you a sense that a sense of evolution or progress, even with that solo mode. So I absolutely adore this game. It's such a charming little game, beautiful, beautiful in every way, and that's Flamecraft.
Okay, well, it's time for the first small box on the list, and that is Splendor Duel is my number 7. Now, I am a huge fan of Splendor. I absolutely love it as one of the gateway games that got us into the hobby. Also, I love playing it even today. I just really enjoy all of the optimization and the planning ahead that goes into Splendor. Splendor Duel is the 2-player version of Splendor, even though you can play the original at 2. But Splendor Duel has been improved to be only this 2-player kind of variant, and the designer is original designer is Marc Andre, but Marc has brought on Bruno Cathala, who was responsible for 7 Wonders Duel, one of our favorite 2-player games. And so Splendor Duel has a bit more complexity to it than the original game. So instead of drafting from a grid-like set of tiered cards, you're now still drafting from tiered cards in a slightly different shape, a pyramid shape, such that the hardest cards, there are fewer of them to draft from. But the most interesting change is the way that you're going to be drafting resources, or the chips. I will say that the chips are still of very high quality. They've got that
very satisfying,
beautiful tactile feel. This game is not cheap for a small box game, but when you feel the tokens, you will appreciate why it is the price it is. But basically, there is this new puzzle that you are going to be drafting from, which is a grid of gems and pearls, which are a new resource, and gold that are on there as well. And you are going to be able to take 1 to 3 gems, but they have to be in a row, column, or diagonally adjacent to each other. And you can't draft gold, because gold is still used the way that gold is used in the original game, where you use it to lay away or lay by.
Reserve a card.
And you're also going to be able to draft these special pearls, which are a different type of resource. And, then all of the rest of the Splendor rules apply. So you're going to be drafting from there, and you can only have a maximum of 10 gems at one time. And you're going to be using those to pay off the cards that are available to you, or the ones that you've put in reserve. However, there are new end game conditions, and I really like that about this game. So there is still a point end of game. So if you can reach 20 points in your tableau, then you are going to win the game. But if you can get 10 points in any one color, you're also going to win the game. And what's exciting about this new Splendor Duel is there is a card that's worth 1 point, but it's actually a wild, so you can place it anywhere. So it's going to help you build up those 10 points in any one color. And the third way that you can win is through a new printed resource, which is crowns. And if you get 10 crowns, you also win automatically. So there are many different ways that you can push and pull your way around to win the game, depending on what the opponent is doing. I love the economy. I've got so many things to say, but I love the kind of economy of this game because it's really refined down to 2 players. So you know how many of each gem are in there. There are only 2 pearls, and pearls are a resource where you can't create a tableau for them. And a lot of the cards need 1 pearl to satisfy the card. And so if you want, you can just hoard those 2 pearls and stop the other player from getting them. And then there's also this other resource called privilege. And when you have privilege, it's going to allow you to, mostly the biggest benefit is to grab a single gem anywhere from that resource grabbing puzzle. So there's so much more going on here.
I'll also say there's also a bit more interaction in that some of the cards, when you win them, you actually can steal a gem from someone else, or you can take another turn.
Some people will not enjoy that negative player interaction, but there's not a lot of that. There are lots of different actions that occur. Some cards, when you play them, are going to allow you to take another complete turn. So there are all these things going on. I really love it. I can see myself taking this, when I travel somewhere, not to play on a
it still takes
small table.
Yeah,
it takes
a
fair bit of
space. Yeah,
but it is really crunchy. I really enjoy it, and I love Splendor, and now I really love Splendor Duel. So that is my number 7, Splendor Duel.
Now to my number 7. My number 7 is actually a roll and write called Dungeons, Dice, and Danger. Now, this roll and write, it was interesting because, again, it's aesthetic. I think the common denominator is aesthetics so far. Aesthetically, it's probably one of my favorite roll and writes that has ever appeared, because just the way that it looks, like you actually have all these different maps, and it's actually a dungeon kind of crawler. So you're actually going through this dungeon, and the way you're moving is we have a set of dice, and so the set of dice are rolled, and you need to use pick combinations of 2 pairs of combinations, and whatever that number, whatever those numbers are, the sum of those 2 for each pair, it's going to be one of the rooms that you get to kind of cross out or go into. And those rooms need to be adjacent to a room that you're already in. So what may end up happening is that you end up kind of going, uh-oh, I actually can't, any combination that I could make. And that's where it can take a little bit longer with you, because it's there's a bit of math doing the whole,
math.
I found it okay, but you really stumble with that one. You're like, oh my God. And you needed to put them side by side to actually visually see them.
Yeah, and I also think I need to work out every potential combination.
Yeah,
which
see,
is
I'm much more instinctive, and I'm that'll do.
Yeah.
And so then the thing that can happen is sometimes you can kind of leave yourself without options, and all the combos that you can make, you can't actually go into a room, and then you start taking hits to your health. And so it is a dungeon, it is a dungeon crawling roll and ride with player elimination, which, I've been lucky enough that I'm always so risk averse that I tend to not really get myself to the point where, I'm in that sort of a dire circumstance. But the reason why I love this so much is because it's actually quite an epic experience for a roll and ride. And then you have this element of, there's all these different maps as well. And as you're battling different monsters that you're encountering, you're almost you're kind of battling them in a group. So in the sense that if one person manages to defeat them, then it makes them, it's sort of it's weakening them, and it's making them a little bit easier for other people to come and battle that same monster later on.
I really like the unlocking of different doors. So the more doors that you've unlocked or opened up paths into an area, the more numbers that you have available to you to be able to defeat that opponent. Sorry, the bad guy.
Yeah. So, and you're also kind of collecting loot and other things along the way, and unlocking other abilities, and it's just it just packs so much into this roll and ride. And I think I've been waiting for this more epic, I guess adventuring roll and ride experience, and this delivered in a beautiful aesthetic.
The colourful sheets are gorgeous, and the illustrations really beautiful. I'll give you that. But for me, the processing power is too high. Too much maths involved.
Yeah. So there you go. That's Dungeons, Dice, and Danger.
So my number 6 is actually much higher on Maggie's list, so I'm not going to talk about it. I'll talk about it when we get there. So we'll head straight into Maggie's number 6.
My number 6 is a game called Distilled. So in Distilled, we are inheriting a distillery, and so we are essentially making spirits of different types. This is a beautiful, fairly complex, or not complex, medium weight Euro style game. distilling where you have a sort of unique starting ability based on, you know, who you're inheriting your distillery from, and then a bit of a goal in terms of, you know, what's going to be your signature drink for your family, kind of like your family signature drink. And again, there's a lot of thought into what for the different regions and different spirits across the world, like what are the ingredients that go into it, and to make it those particular spirits. Now, the thing that I love about this is that you're going to be building up your distillery, just on your player board, and that's going to be you're going to be adding upgrades, you're going to be collecting ingredients, and then you're actually going to be brewing your spirit together. So you're going to have to put water, yeast, and different types of sugar to create the alcohols, to then eventually, you know, sometimes you're going to have to age them depending on the type of spirit that you're trying to create. If it's whiskey, it has to be aged in a particular type of like wooden barrel, and then you can even upgrade the types of bottles that you're going to be bottling that up into for even more points or money as you're getting to the point of selling them. The process of that brewing is so delightful, because you're actually, once you kind of put all of your ingredients together, you're going to be shuffling that deck, and then you're going to be taking off the top and the bottom cards, which represent the in the distilling process, you always take off the top and the bottom of the actual the brew, because that sort of represents the impurities, which then gets in the game, goes back into your kind of pantry to use later on. In real life, that also gets kind of saved, because it's going to go into the future brews. So the connection, and then whatever you end up with, that's going to be like your final concoction or your final product. Now, there's so many. This is so incredibly thematic as an experience. Of every single element as you play through this makes perfect sense in line with what a distilling process is. There's all these beautiful different recipes that you can unlock in terms of like the different types of spirits that you can make. You're not going to be able to do all of them, so you're going to have to specialize. And it's just such a beautiful execution of a theme that obviously, you know, this is designed by Dave Beck. Obviously, you know, a big passion
huge
project.
Passion project. Yeah. This is our prototype as well, we should say. But we're looking forward to picking up our final copy.
Yes.
It feels like so long ago.
It does feel like a while ago, but it's like, solid game.
My number 5 is a cooperative game. And
what?
Before I pull it out, there were so many co-ops that we played and enjoyed this year.
Yeah.
It actually changed us, I think. And this was one of the games that started all of that for me, and that is Decorum, or Decorum, if you like, the passive-aggressive game of cohabitation. Now, Decorum, I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, because it is a cooperative game. But, and people on the channel have given me a lot of, our community's given me a lot of feedback about the fact that as far as co-op games go, this is probably the least co-op game, because there is so much hidden information and limited amount of communication that you can give your partner that you're playing with. I will say that we play this at 2-player. It is a slightly different game at 3 or 4 players. So I'm going to speak to the 2-player experience, which we absolutely loved. And I forced Maggie to play all the way through every scenario, because the way that this game works is you are both cohabitating in a space in a house. And so basically you want to decorate this house the way that you want to decorate the house. You individually, not the way that your partner wants to decorate the house.
Very specific requirements for what it needs to look like.
And so you have these hidden objectives that you both get a card for the scenario. There's a bit of flavor text about that scenario. And then you're both going to review all of the different rules that you want to make come to life in this house. So for example, I might want every wall to be painted blue in the house, and Maggie might want to have no red lamps in the house, for example. And what you're going to be doing on your turn is simply making one change to the house, whether that's swapping out, one picture frame for another picture frame, or whether it's taking away an item, or whether it's repainting a room. You are just going to make that one move, and then you're going to ask your partner, how do you feel about that?
What do you think about my renovation touch?
And your partner is going to say, I really don't like that.
Yeah.
That makes me fairly unhappy. Or Yeah, I love that for us. Like that the house looks better. Yeah. And so you're just giving these little clues about whether you're happy or sad or neutral about the change. And what you're trying to do is reach both of your objectives collectively. And so when your objective has been satisfied, you say that, and then your partner has the opportunity to change the house, and you know, maybe they mess up your once satisfied objectives, or maybe you can both achieve the puzzle. And the puzzle is always achievable. But the cool thing about this box is that it comes with all of these different scenarios, and they escalate in difficulty. And so the puzzle gets more and more complex. There might only be a few ways that both of you can satisfy all of your conditions. And you're unlocking new puzzle pieces in some of the envelopes as well. So I just really enjoyed it. The reason why this game shines so much is because of the table talk. It is, I have played this with other people, not just Maggie, and every time it's just the laughter of just like, you know what? I hate what you did with that room. Why would you do that? Like, it's just really
Which to
fun.
me, that's not really passive aggressive. That's aggressive aggressive. If you're like, no, I hate that, and I hate you for it. That's aggressive aggressive.
But I also enjoy that you can't say.
But you're not. Yeah,
you
you're
can't
not
say what you like, what you dislike
want.
about it. You're just like, I'm really not into that, which is quite passive. And I really enjoy this game. It is a co-op game that really opened my eyes to how much I do enjoy co-op games, because when I look at this on my shelf, it brings me so much joy, and it's never leaving the collection. Sorry, Maggie. That is my number 5, Decorum.
Now let's go into my number 5, and that is Wingspan Asia. So this is the new standalone game for 2 players, or for 1 to 2 players, but also expansion to the Wingspan world and universe. So in Wingspan Asia, you have just more birds, more beautiful, beautiful cards of birds. You've got a whole lot of game into a teeny tiny or fairly small box, and you have, for a 2-player version of Wingspan, which is actually our favorite player count, you have a whole new central puzzle, yin-yang puzzle, where you are going to be putting tokens of your color onto it based on the birds that you're playing onto the different habitats. So it adds another little layer of thinkiness and complexity that just makes it even more like, crunchy and delightful.
Yeah, because now the round end conditions or objectives are all based on that central puzzle. So you have to focus on that puzzle in some ways, otherwise you're giving away so many victory points. So it does add a nice little twist.
Absolutely.
And an additional layer to 2-player version. 2-player regular Wingspan is also very good.
Yeah. But this just kind of levels it up just that little bit.
Yeah.
That is just, delightful. And if you've never played Wingspan, it's all about bird watching and kind of playing different bird cards onto the 3 different habitats, making sure that you have enough eggs, and then creating a bit of an engine by having all of the synergies of those birds. Whenever you activate that particular row, a lot of those birds are going to reactivate and give you goodies. So, Wingspan as a core is an excellent game. Wingspan Asia as a standalone, I loved it particularly as this would be like what I would be recommending people try if you've never tried Wingspan before. Start with Wingspan Asia, see if you enjoy the universe of Wingspan, and if you do, get the whole lot, and then you can mix these cards with all the other expansions and all the other games for a super packed Wingspan experience. So that is my number 5, Wingspan Asia.
Now my number 4 game of 2022 is another big heavy one. Let's bring it out. It is Planet Unknown. Now, in Planet Unknown, you are terraforming planets. Not my favorite theme. I'm not a huge one into space themes, but this is a beautiful polyomino puzzle that is really cool because it has at the centerpiece of it a Lazy Susan. And I actually backed this on Kickstarter. I waited with much anticipation. I knew it was going to be exciting, and it delivered so well, because this game, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be passing around a first player token, and that first player is responsible for spinning the Lazy Susan to the segment that they want want to select a polyomino tile from. And wherever they position that, that's going to also dictate the segment where other people are going to be able to draft a polyomino tile from. And what makes that really clever is you can have a lot of people playing this game because you're all simultaneously selecting a puzzle piece. You then take that puzzle piece, and on it, it has different types of terrain, and you're going to be placing it down onto your grid-like planet. And when you place it down, it's going to trigger the 5 different resource tracks that are based on the terrain type that is shown on the polyomino tile. The overall objective, of course, is to complete the puzzle to the best of your ability, because you're going to get points for completed rows and completed columns. But you also want to move up those resource tracks as much as possible, and they all do different things. One of them, for example, is going to allow you to send out rovers onto the planet to help you clean up some elements of the puzzle that are going to get in the way of completing rows and columns, as well as give you bonus points along the way. There are also these little trees from one of the tracks that are going to help you fill in gaps in your puzzle. And then there are ones that simply give you new abilities or end game goals. And so there are all these like interesting things that are happening on there. The fun thing about it is that some way up on the tracks, there are these little combo symbols that allow you to go up on a different track. And so when you hit them with one, you get to go up on another track, which might trigger another one. You get to go up another track. So you get this like really fun combo feel from the game. There's also these cool objectives that sit in between you and the player on your left and the player on your right. And so you're going to be competing over that objective, usually something to do with the way your puzzle plays out. I just really love that. And if you want to make the game even more complex, there are asymmetric planets and boards. I prefer it with everybody having the same planet, everybody having the same like standard track, because I like when everybody has this the same and we can like, you know, compete over the same puzzle. But I was really like, I had high expectations for Planet Unknown, and it met and exceeded them. This is such a great polyomino tile game, one of the best, I think. And so that's why it is my number 4, Planet Unknown.
And now we go to my number 4 is Come Together. So we have a lot of games that we haven't actually covered in the channel yet. Surprise! so Come Together is a festival, kind of Woodstock-inspired music concert themed game where you are putting together like the most epic music festival. And so the way that you're doing that is you're going to be helping with one, attracting the concert goers, making sure that they have enough tents to stay and hang out with or hang out in, and then also attracting the different acts that are going to actually be performing and make sure that they have, you know, a stage to perform on. So all these different things, the way you're going to be doing them is through a worker placement, and you're going to have all these different locations where, you know, each of them are just going to relate to one of these areas that I've just spoken about. And as you're placing the interesting thing, as you're placing your little workers there, you don't necessarily actually get to have the bonus yet. It's only when one person then decides to go, yep, that's good, that's done, that area's as good as I wanted, and let's claim it. All those workers get lifted, and at that point that they get to take the resources from it. The action is also going to be getting more powerful the more people have kind of contributed or gone into that location. So that's what we're also trying to come together. It's not, you know, it's like you actually kind of invested in a lot of people going to that section before it gets activated, so you actually end up having a more powerful action.
So if you go there, there's a temptation to activate it, or you can wait until more people arrive, and then you're going to get even more bonuses. And another dynamic in the game is that when you see that lots of people around the table are going to one particular area, you're like, well, that's more likely to get activated than the other area, and there's not that long left in this round, so I better jump in on that and at least get something good. Otherwise, I might go to a spot that never gets activated.
Yeah. So this was a real like surprise in terms of like from the theme, you wouldn't realize how crunchy and how like thinky it actually is, but it really delivers a really solid, great, very satisfying satisfying player experience and lots of laughter. Best had with playing a kind of 60s, 70s Woodstocky like soundtrack as well, because it's just like, it really gets you in the mood. And there's lots of puns.
Oh my goodness, that's what I was going to say. The best
artists.
Part. Yeah, the different artists that the bands are named after board games.
Yes.
And they are little twists on board game titles. So, you know, all the gamers around the table are going to have a laugh like as those come out, trying to work out what the game is. You feel very clever. Like the little in-jokes. I really like this too. This is really close to making it to my top 10. It is a really cool twist on worker placement. Yeah.
So that is my number 4, Come Together.
And now my number 3 is another small box game and another cooperative game. And it is the third co-op on my top 10 of 2022.
We have to stop saying that we don't co-op, because it's officially
I feel like that's done. That's done.
We've evolved. We've leveled up.
We have. Although we have always enjoyed games with sand timers, and Kites is one of those games. So in Kites, you are collectively trying to keep a group of kites up in the air, and those kites are represented by sand timers that are in the middle of the table, and they are all different colors. And the way you're going to keep them up in the air is by playing cards on your turn that represent each, well, 1 or 2 of the colored kites. And when you play that card, you might be like, okay, I get to flip the blue sand timer and the red sand timer, and that's going to give them more time up in the sky, hopefully. Now, you're going to have to be communicating with the rest of the table, because there might be a sand timer that's running out. For example, the yellow kite is about to come crashing down, but I don't have a card that has yellow on it, so I'm like, I'm just going to quickly do these other things.
So like, I have it. Just play anything else.
Just get back to me, because I've got the yellow card that can save the yellow kite. There's also a white sand timer that acts like a wild. So when you play any single colored card, you are able to flip the white sand timer. But this game ends when everybody runs out of the cards in their hand and there are no cards left to draw back your hand back from. From the deck. And so basically all cards have been exhausted in the game. But what's really cool about this game is you're all playing one card at a time and drawing a card back up, and it's just like, you know, it's stressful, but you're managing. And then when the final card gets taken from the main deck, that white sand timer can no longer be flipped. So now you've only got until that white sand timer is going to run out for everybody to use up all of the cards in their hand, and that just adds this like chaotic end, tail end to the game. Go, keep everything up in the sky. And it's so fun. And then if that wasn't enough, because that is stressful, there are some additional more advanced cards that you can add into the game that force things to happen, like people to swap cards, which means that they're taking their eye off the kites. There's aeroplane mode, which everyone has to go silent and means they can't talk with each other, communicate to each other. And there is a storm is coming, and when that storm hits, it's going to turn all of the sand timers, no matter what state they're in. And I just really love this game. It is a brilliant game to have on you at a con, for example, because it can be played late at night to re-energize a group. It can be played when people don't know each other that well, because it's this like chaotic game, and it's just a really fun, energizing, quick to teach. Like
very loud though, so just be mindful, because it's one of those, you're going to be that table.
Yeah,
you're
you
going to
be
be
that
loud table at the
You'll be that table that everyone's jealous of, because they're having so much fun.
Like, keep it down. Try to concentrate.
But that is very high on my list. I really, really love this game. I'll be taking it to our family Christmas. That is Kites, my number 3.
Now for my number 3, it is going to be another, not so little, but kind of little game. Well, actually, no, it is little. Everything in it is very little, called Hamlet. So Hamlet, I did not actually know this, but Hamlet is a village that doesn't have a church yet. So it's not like, so is it like a town that doesn't have a church yet? And it's like, once you have the church, then it's, it's a fully fleshed out village. So in Hamlet, we're all going to be kind of, well, it's competitive, but we're still kind of collectively working to build the central church. And the way we're going to be doing that is there's going to be a combination of, well, we have our workers, so we're going to be able to like recruit additional workers along the way. We have donkeys to help us move supplies from one area to another. And the other thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating or building different manufacturing type tiles or buildings that'll help us produce, like, well, you can always go and get your raw materials, but then you can turn those raw materials into more refined materials. So for example, logs can be then turned into planks. Not only that, then you're also going to be able to turn things like, wheat into, you're turning wheat into, flour. But then I'm thinking, like, you can also make dairy. So it looks like dairy. I'm like, where did that come from? Because you usually are using, like, but anyways, that aside, you're going to be able to have all these little buildings where you're producing all these different things that then you're able to kind of ship out as well for different contracts, make some money. And all of those things are going to be helping you to kind of get the resources that you need to start contributing to the building of that central church. Now, the cool thing about this is that anyone, when you build a building, anyone can use that building if they have those, if they're able to get the materials for it. But if you were the first person to, for example, get, the place where you make the flour. Now I've forgotten what the
mill?
Yeah, the mill. I'm going to blame ESL, English as a second language here. So if you were the first person to build a mill, then you're actually going to be able to kind of get this little token that means that every time you make that flour is going to be the highest possible quality. Even when I make that flour that's the highest possible quality, someone else can go and
use it.
Yeah, use it, sell it. But whenever they use my flour, I get benefited from that. I get paid for that. So I love this sort of, it's kind of like a semi-shared economy where other people can kind of also use that building and make their own stuff. But it's not going to be as high quality if they haven't been the first. But it's still like, we'll kind of get to benefit from that. We're still building this thing together, but it's still ultimately competitive. So I love the aesthetic of this. I know that Amy kind of struggled with how little everything is.
Everything is super
so tiny.
I
So
wish
if you have big hands, you're probably going to struggle. It's a little bit fiddly. But
it's very fiddly.
I love fiddly. And I love this. Like, as I was playing, I'm like, I love this game. I love this thing so much.
From the very first game, Maggie had a smile from ear to ear. You were just loving this game.
Yeah.
It has some interesting mechanics in that it is a shared economy, and then using those donkeys to create a network to move resources around, while also focusing on drafting tiles and then building tiles to contribute to the building of the town, and then ultimately to contribute to building of the church. There's a lot of layers here. There's a lot going on. For me, it's just a little bit too fiddly and everything's a little bit too small.
I loved it.
But I did enjoy my time with it as well.
It's like, it's crunchy. It's like there's a lot kind of going on. There's a, positive kind of player interaction in terms of that kind of shared economy, and I can sell your stuff, but then you still get benefit. To me, it kind of felt like a much more friendly and accessible, way more accessible, even though it's still pretty crunchy, version of something like Roads and Boats, where it's like you have that, like the resources. It's all about kind of like creating the network and kind of selling those resources, and it's like they're there. Anyone can use them.
It still has donkeys.
It still has donkeys,
Sneaky
but
donkeys.
now you're not like, no, like I'm getting nothing for it, and I did all the effort to create that thing. Like, no, you are getting something for it, but the other person also gets into it. So I absolutely adore this.
This is the Kickstarter edition, and I'm not sure if it came with the retail, but the build your own insert was really cool and worked really well. The build your own church, the church is a little bit
it's just
wonky.
It did not kind of work very well.
It's a little bit wonky.
And that's an optional, to the point where we ended up not using it.
We used the flat pieces because it actually doesn't obstruct view as well, the rest of the board.
Yeah, the 3D cardboard church pieces. Because that's the other thing, you physically, as you're constructing little elements, you're adding to the church that starts coming to life in front of you. But if you don't have that version, don't worry about it. Because, the 3D church, unnecessary. We don't even use it. But excellent game, at least for me. That's Hamlet.
And our number 2 is our second crossover game, a game that exists on both of our lists and happens to be both of our number 2 for the year. It is another recent game, and it is a superb game, and that is Woodcraft. So in Woodcraft...
Solid dice, come on!
The main way that you're going to be getting things done in this game is through this giant action selection wheel that sits in the middle of all players. You are dying to talk about the theme, aren't you? I can tell.
You're master woodcrafters, and you've got the wood is represented by dice. Different types of woods are dice of different colors, so some of them are a bit more premium than others. But the number of the pip, like on the dice, represents the length of it, and you can saw it. By that, it's just like split the dice and make a couple of dice. To sort of like break up the numbers that make up. So, for example, a 6 can then be broken up into two threes, or a 4 and a 2, or you can glue them together and make a higher. It's so simple, but it just makes perfect thematic sensory. And then ultimately, you're creating these beautiful little wood creations.
Yeah, and the way you're going to be doing that is through this action selection wheel, which is really clever in its design. If you played Vladimir Suchi's previous titles, you'll recognize that wheel from a couple of them. But this one, I think, is just a fantastic version of it. On your turn, you're going to be taking a segment from that wheel and moving it around to a new quadrant of that wheel. And as you do that, the action is going to be the actions that are selected less frequently are going to be attracting more and more bonuses to make them more appealing, so other players are going to want to take them. And that is essentially that main mechanic of the board. And what you're trying to get done is you're trying to race to upgrade your workshop, because your workshop is going to have employees that are going to give you special bonuses. It's going to help you improve your income every time income is triggered. And there are other things that you can do, like improve your ability to saw dice. You're going to be able to grow new die
you're growing your trees of different woods.
And ultimately you're trying to do all of this to be able to do contract fulfillment, but in this game the contracts are really interesting because if you fulfill certain types of contracts in enough time, they are going to contribute to the multiplier of the score, or your what do you call that?
It's like a reputation
your
track.
Reputation, which is going to give you more points per contract that you've completed by the end of the game. You can't do everything in this game, so you really need to focus. You need to be super efficient with your actions. There are so many layers to this. We will do a full review of Woodcraft, but it really made its way into our hearts because it is actually quite wonderful at 2 players. The whole game
scales really well.
And I will say the reason it's not my number 1 is because it is very multiplayer solitaire, which of course Maggie loves.
Has an excellent solo mode. I need to put that out there as well. It is one of those beat your own score type that is just so simple, so easy, and you get to just explore the game and get better at it, as evidenced by I couldn't win against Amy before I played solo, and then I played solo.
Wow, you really beat me, because it is like you against the puzzle essentially. There is interaction in that the action selection wheel is changing with every person's turn, but really you're just trying to optimize and build up as quickly as possible, and it feels like you never have enough time in this game, which is a key tension that we love in board games, that real tight feeling of like, I can't do everything and I just want to do that, and I don't have enough currency, which is blueberries. The currency
is the currency.
Currency are not practical.
Not practical, but I love it. Like, I absolutely love it. Yeah. This game, it was one of those, like, I learned it and I was like, this makes perfect sense to me. And like the rule book was I found pretty easy to follow. It was fairly thematic, so it all kind of made sense. It was all very logical. And Amy was like, so is this going to be easy? I'm like, yeah, I think like that's going to be easy to. And then when we kind of got it to the table, like, oh my goodness, the decisions that you're having to make, that's where all the crunchiness is, and the balance and of all those things. So I really, really appreciate this. And also like all the things that you get to kind of explore in terms of like, oh yeah, what happens if I upgrade different elements of my workshop? And then you really then kind of set things up to then your later turns or later rounds, you have like a super ability to really do all sorts of wonderful things with those dice.
So that is our number 2.
Combined number 2,
Woodcraft. Now, my number 1 game of 2022, if you haven't guessed already, also involves an action selection wheel. So number 1 and number 2 both have the same central mechanic, and that is Terracotta Army. And now Terracotta Army does have a similar wheel to Woodcraft. However, in this one, we're using worker placement. So you start the game with some, standard meeples that you are able to upgrade into, bigger meeples that have more power and more ability to take actions on the wheel. But the key thing about this game is that the wheels move. So there are 3 layers to the central wheel, and you can pay $2 to move one of the wheels, either clockwise or anti-clockwise, depending on which wheel you're moving. And then you are going to be able to take the 3 actions that are within the segment where you've placed your worker. And that in and of itself is such a cool puzzle. I really enjoy that because it is so tight and tense, and it always feels like you're hoping that nobody moves the wheel, or you're hoping that somebody does, because you're just staring at the action you need to get done, and maybe you don't have the $2 that you need to turn that wheel, and it's excruciating. But I really love it because the thing I love about this game is, one, highly interactive. There are multiple points of interaction in this game. Not only is that wheel turning, not only are people taking the worker placement spots that you wanted, and now you can't go there, but also there's a heavy competition for first player because there's only one way to get that in the game, and you've got to use a worker to do it in one of your actions. There is also this puzzle, which is, I haven't even spoken about the theme, but in Terracotta Army, you are building out the Terracotta Army, and you are doing that in this like grid-like area that represents the mausoleum where all of the Terracotta Army were found, and you are building out different types of warriors as well as different types of specialists in this area to essentially play an area control game. So there are going to be points given for large groups of the same type of warriors, and there are also these amazing little inspectors that move around this grid and are going to give out points at the end of each round depending on who has area majority in a row or column, and they can be moved by the players. So highly interactive, because one moment you're getting lots of points, then someone moves that inspector, and all of a sudden you're going to get 0 points.
Blast!
I also love that there are these masters that you can contribute to, which are quite expensive, and they get more expensive the more that you are purchasing, and they're going to give you end of round effects or ongoing abilities that can be triggered on the wheel. And one of the other things I really love about this game is that at the start of the game you're going to be dealing out a random objective that is going to score at the end of each round, but right from the beginning of the game you can see what each of those are going to be. So maybe you're not going to meet this objective with the most coins, because I can see Maggie's got $1 million over there. But so I might as well start focusing on the next objective, and so you can kind of plan ahead for some of the objectives, and it means that each game is slightly different, because yes, in one game you might be hoarding coins, in the next game you might be hoarding clay or building one particular type of warrior first. And I just feel like everything in this game has such a strong sense of purpose. There are no peripheral pieces of the game where it's like, I don't know why they tacked that on. Everything just contributes so nicely, and for such a big Euro, aside from the scoring conditions, which do take do take a while to teach, and I wish there was an easy reference. Why didn't they include a reference on the board or somewhere on a card or something? But the core mechanics of it, very straightforward and easy to explain. A lot of people had AP with the wheel. I didn't find that to be the case at all. I found it like just a beautiful combination of things. I really love this from the first game. This had me smiling from ear to ear. It is my number 1 of 2022 Terracotta Army.
And my number 1, oh my goodness, I think I'm going to have to turn over and do some very safe lifting. My number 1 is this beast of a game. It is Wonderland's War.
My number 6 as well.
There you go. That's that was the missing ingredient. So Wonderland's War, I don't know if this will come as a surprise to some people. I absolutely love this game. It's such a big game. It has a bit of everything, but it's epic, and it lasts an epic amount of time. So it's one of those that, you have to have the hours to be able to kind of get it to the table, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful production. So Wonderland's War, Wonderlandians were in Alice in Wonderland universe, but things have kind of they've gone a bit strange in the opposite way of strange, where like now things are not as strange as they used to. Things are kind of becoming a little bit too tame, and so we're going to essentially try to be the next ruler of Wonderland to bring it back to whatever our version of Wonderland, the best version of Wonderland is according to your own individual character. This is a push your luck bag builder game that also has area control, because you're going to be kind of getting these chips that are going to go into your bag, and all those chips represent a different kind of strengths and sometimes unique powers, and that's what you're going to be using in battle when across in all the different regions across Wonderland to then win essentially the votes of the people in those areas to ultimately get all of your be the essentially the ruler at the end. The other thing is you're going to also have quests. So there's so many different ways of getting points in this, where you might and then end up with a quest where you're actually not even invested in winning a particular battle. So you're going into that battle with your bag and stuff, but you actually want to end the battle with a particular combination of things in there, with a particular final chip being played, or with a particular place in the the number of points that you got for that. So the other thing is, the main thing that you're also going to be doing is you're going to be going around the Mad Hatter's tea party.
That is one of my favorite parts of this game, is that it is played in two distinct phases. There's the tea party.
To front. Yeah.
Yes, there's a tea party where you're setting up for battle, and then there is the battling, drawing from the bag, everybody revealing at the same time, all the laughter, all the chaos. But I love that first tea party because it always feels excruciating, because you're moving around this rondel, picking up cards that are going to give you different things, some of which are going to help you build out your bag for the battle.
Yeah.
But there are really powerful cards that are also going to give you shards of madness, which can help contribute to you getting more terrible
your bag.
Terrible tokens that are going into your bag. And so it's just this constant I could get that card, but and it's also, they're going to have the number of supporters on them as well, some of them, that are going to allow you to put more pieces out into that area control game. So there's just a lot to think about.
Yeah, there's a lot. But I absolutely adore this game. I love, I know it can be a bit divisive in terms of the aesthetic. I love the aesthetic. I love this really high contrast, saturated kind of colors. I love the world of, Alice in Wonderland. And I just love being able to go on endless quests and not even bother about, I'm not even be that invested in the battle, aside from just whatever my little thing is.
So I backed this on Kickstarter. I was expecting the premium chips to be nice because they were expensive, but they blew my mind.
They were the premium chips are next level.
Everything about the production value was super high, and it just really does add to the table press. It makes people want to play it. There's so much to explore, from the Wonderlandians, the different chips that have different actions, the fact that you can also change the abilities of the chips as well, just by using a different set of cards that explains what they do. That's a really clever way to add in the variability.
Every character that you play is asymmetric, so you all kind of have a different, unique little power ability that you can use as well.
And I will say that because of the size and scale of the game, it does have that amazing table presence, but at the same time, it's the reason why it's not higher on my list, because it is a beast to get out, and it is a long game to play. So it does limit the occasions that I have for it, but I totally appreciate the design. It's a wonderful game. Not surprised it's Maggie's number one.
There you go, another aesthetic. I think that's been the common denominator. All my games are absolutely beautiful. This is my only non-solo game. So I know that there's an official solo mode, but it's more of the, you have an AI and you can kind of play against that. I would love a solo mode with this, where it's just a beat your own score type thing, because I'm just going to go on quests. That's all I want to do. That is my number one, Wonderland's War.
And that is our list for 2022. I'm sure there were some surprises in there, maybe some that weren't a surprise at all. What do you think of our list? Please let us know in the comments and tell us what was your favorite game of 2022. I'm sure there were so many to choose from. It was really hard to put this list together. There were some great games, and we hope you've enjoyed discovering them along with us this year. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. It means so much to us. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.